and welcome to another rambling review from Adventures in TV Land. In this review, we're going to talk about Scream 7. Scream 7 is the latest film in the Scream franchise. I've always liked, for the most part, the Scream movies, especially the original 3. Scream 4 was pretty good. I did not care for Scream 5. I thought Scream 6 was a little bit better movie than Scream 5. It was interesting to see how that would continue on, but there were some issues there with the cast, and some people didn't sign on, and there was other personal issues, and they went in a slightly different direction with Scream 7. And we've got Neve Campbell is back as Sidney Prescott. She was not in the last movie. It was the only movie she was not in. The movie focuses on her and her daughter, her oldest daughter, Tatum. Tatum is the exact same age that Sidney was when the original stab murders, the Scream murders. In the Scream universe, they're referred to as the stab murders at Woodsboro, Massachusetts. She is the same age as her mother was. Her mother has not talked a lot about her past with her daughter, but a lot of it's just out there on the public. She knows somewhat about it because it's on the internet, because of the movies, because of the books, everything like that. But Tatum doesn't really know her mother. Sidney has tried to protect her oldest daughter. She wanted her to have a normal childhood growing up and not have to be associated and connected to her own troubled past. However, this movie does not allow that to happen. The movie begins off, with the scene that's kind of connected to the rest of the movie, but it's its own little scene, and it takes place where the original murders at the house took place. That house has been turned into this bed and breakfast experience, and there's a couple that come there to spend the night, and some gruesome things happen to them there. Sidney Prescott now lives in a small town of Pine Grove, Indiana. She has a life. She's tried to separate herself from her former life. She runs a coffee shop there. Her daughter is somewhat following in her footsteps. She is in the theatrical department at her high school and is acting, and there's a lot of similarities between her daughter Tatum and Sidney herself, and it makes Sidney afraid. But Sidney gets a call, and it appears we have a blast from the past decided to target Sidney's daughter, Tatum, to get at Sidney. And thus, the story takes off from there. The Scream movies they're not like your typical horror movies. They're not as gory as many horror movies are. There's a line in here in the movie, Mindy Martin Meeks, the niece, and her brother, Chad Martin Meeks. They are the twin niece and nephew of Randy Meeks from the original 2 Scream movies. But Mindy Martin Meeks makes the point that there's always this kind of Agatha Christie type element to the stab stories, to the stab murders. And it's very true in the Scream movies. There's this Agatha Christie type of kind of reveal at the end. Who is the actually responsible for the murder, or the murderers, and who they are. It is a mystery. It might just be a throwback that was mentioned very early on in the movie, and you trying to figure out who are the murderers or who is the murderer. There's this Agatha Christie element to it. These aren't just horror movies. there is some horror in there. There's a little bit of a gore. The original ones were, at least, they were smarter films than those horror movies were. The first 2 acts of the movie really well done. The third act, not so great, kind of rushed. It's like, they didn't, in my mind, it's almost as though they didn't know who the killers were going to be until they started filming the movie. And that could very well have been the case with this film, with the backstory. They probably didn't know who the murderers were going to be when they started filming it. Or they had a different set of killers in mind, and they had to change things up because of everything else that was going on. And so the third act, and especially the reveal at the end, this is the lamest reveal in the entire Scream franchise. It's like, huh? It is by far the worst reveal, the worst connection in the entire franchise. That's all I can say about that. So that's Scream 7. Overall, I enjoyed the film, but I do enjoy the Scream movies. If you are not a fan of the Scream franchise, you might not enjoy this movie. If you like horror movies, you might like, there are some interesting kills. if you like things like that, you will enjoy those kills and things. It's not a standalone film. You have to have seen the other film sort of to connect to it. But at least to get the characters, the perspective with that. But other than that, how would I grade this? I will give this movie a B minus, I guess. A B minus because the third act is really lacking. But it was great to see Neve Campbell back. She looks really good. She does a great job. Gail Devers is back again, by Courtney Cox. They've got connections to all the films that are in this movie. Scream 7! This has been another Rambling review of Adventures in TV Land. Until next time, that's a wrap!